Here is Todd Blanche lying to the House of Representatives this week.
You just gave the president and his family a tax immunity to the tune of about $100 million.
Not true. It's not immunity. Okay, so it's not immunity. What it says is like any time the IRS settles with an individual taxpayer or another company as part of the settlement, it's standard, it's typical to get rid of past ongoing audits. It's not a forward-looking document. It's nothing that gives any sort of immunity in the future to the president or his family or his organizations.
He is lying. It is immunity. And the other lie there is that when the government settles a tax case with an individual taxpayer for something that happened 6 years ago, the government does not surrender the right to audit any tax matters after that event 6 years ago, which is what Todd Blanche has now done for Donald Trump. Todd Blanche's answer there to Representative Rosa DeLauro is an indication of just how difficult it will be for Todd Blanche to get through a Senate confirmation hearing without lying. Joining us now is Andrew Weissmann, former FBI general counsel and an MS Now legal analyst. He's the author of the new best-selling book, Liar's Kingdom, How to Stop Trump's Deceit and Save America. It's now a New York Times bestseller. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Todd Blanche's explanation there about how routine it is that when the federal government settles a tax matter, it's not just for the tax return in question, it's for tax returns filed after that tax return.
So everything about that is preposterous in terms of what he is saying. I just want to make sure people understand why that is so ridiculous, not just for the reasons you said, Lawrence, but when you have a settlement, it is of the matter that is under investigation. Donald Trump was not settling the what supposedly is the ongoing audit of his taxes. You could imagine in that situation that Donald Trump then would say it would be, you pay X amount of money to settle this. And then the person is given sort of not quite immunity, but the idea is then you're done. In other words, the IRS isn't going to come back on the same matter and say, okay, I want to continue auditing you for the thing we just settled. And that is true in that situation. That would be done because you would have resolved that issue. That is not what this lawsuit was by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was complaining about a contractor at the IRS leaking his returns. You don't settle that matter, if this was a real settlement, by saying, oh, now don't ever go after me, my family, my companies for any money that we owe for taxes at any moment prior to today. That is what Todd Blanche did. It is so deceptive for somebody who is seeking to be the actual Attorney General of the United States to give that answer. It is so obvious that it is not seeking to tell the truth, seeking to understand his obligation to oversight by Congress of the Department of Justice.
What would you focus on in a Senate confirmation hearing of Todd Blanche?
That is a great question because there is a ton, but I think something that I would focus on if I were a Democrat that I think could appeal to Republican members of Congress looking at this are that Todd Blanche oversaw the Department of Justice when they sought to indict 6 members of Congress. They sought to indict 6 members of Congress who are part of the intelligence community or in law enforcement or the national security apparatus. They sought to indict them for asserting their First Amendment rights and speaking and saying that the military has an obligation not to follow illegal orders. I would ask him, how do you justify that? It is true the grand jury rejected those charges, But that's more reason to be skeptical of Todd Blanche's oversight, that he is so willing to do Donald Trump's bidding that he has sought to indict 6 members of Congress. What does that say about what the safety of the members of Congress to a future administration with Todd Blanche as the head of that organization? To me, that would be one of the prime things that I would look at. I would also point out that he is the same person who oversaw the Department of Justice seeking to have an open criminal investigation of Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. Also something that was rejected this time by a federal judge. Again, it is something that Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate thought was a just hideous idea, and it shares the weaponization. So those are 2 of the many, many things that you could ask him about.